Pledge of Allegiance. All right, is there anyone who would like to make any comments to council about any item that is not on our agenda this evening? Come on up to the podium and please give us your name and address if you would mind.
Annette Fronta. I am representing the Elks Lodge tonight, and my address is 865 Stone Ridge Court in Glenwood Springs. Tonight I just wanted to come before you with some information and some thank yous. We are now embracing our third annual Burgers for Badges, which is an event that we as the Elks have partnered with the city of Glenwood Springs to appreciate first responders throughout the valley, from Gibson to Rifle and Carbondale. If you might recall, last year we did it around September 11th, and that's what we're trying to do it as an annual event. This year was a little challenging to do that with the bridge closure. So you've graciously allowed us to use the community center. This event will be held Friday the 19th, which is 2 weeks from tomorrow, 11 to 1 in the afternoons. It'll be a luncheon, free to all first responders who show up. They're welcome to bring their families. We're gonna try to get as many donations from the community to give away to the officers who come for lunch. And really it's just a recognition and an opportunity to show our appreciation and support. I've got a fair amount of this out on social media through the fire department, the police department, and we'll get it out through the sheriff's office as well. And if you can help just by spreading the word, I do have some additional flyers if anybody is interested. And hopefully you can make it to show your own appreciation.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I would encourage,
Absolutely.
yeah, I would encourage any of us who can to volunteer. I don't know, do you still need burger flippers?
Thank you.
Are you?
We won't turn anyone away.
Okay. All right. It's a good event. Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to come on up?
Yeah, I'd like to.
All right.
Good evening. My name's Njord Rhoda. I'm a resident at 172 Red Bluff Vista in Glenwood Springs. I'm also the owner of Ravco Aviation, a helicopter and aviation company that specializes in supporting the Defense Department as well as other institutional customers. I've been working with the airport board recently in trying to establish a lease program in order to create space for businesses to grow on the airport. Right now, there's no opportunity for any businesses to expand, to grow, to include my business, because there is nowhere to put any ground support equipment. Ground support equipment is critical to aviation. It's where we have our tooling, our parts, oils, all the different things that you need to run an aviation company. In instance, my company, we were awarded recently a $238 million contract to do training for foreign militaries. I can't do any of that work here in Glenwood. I've had to move that work to other places in Colorado and the United States because I can't even put up a small 20 by 40 foot structure to store oil. Most of the stuff that I do have here locally is in my garage or in the back of trucks. So I've been working with the airport board in proposing a temporary solution to alleviate that, not only for my business, but other businesses that do want to work at the airport. That includes a skydiving company. They have nowhere to store their parachutes when they're not operating. There's a flight instruction company that has nowhere to put their stuff or even conduct ground schooling. There's a tour company that's looking for the same. EMS company that struggles with space. So I'd like to encourage the city council to provide direction to the city planners to allow the establishment of temporary storage at the airport.
All right, thank you. We appreciate that comment.
Thank you.
I know we're in the midst of our airport land use study. Is that something that we might be able to look into prior to the completion of that study?
We haven't started the study. All we've done is apply for a grant.
Okay.
But, I mean, if council would like to direct us to look into that, we can look into it.
Just part of the whole thing.
When do we hear about that grant? Like when might we know if we're gonna get it?
I want to say March. That's just off the top of my head. I know, but we don't have to go on a trip for that one. It's the smaller one, so. But yeah, I think by March we should know.
And who's the grant coming from?
If we get it from DOLA.
Oh, from DOLA, okay.
And then the study that would fund, how long does that take? And-
Typically, to do a decent area-wide kind of study, even though it wouldn't be our area-wide, it takes about a year,
Yeah.
6 months to a year.
Just to get public input and.
Correct.
Strategic plan.
And if you know, we want to look at the big picture, including ways to possibly expand the airport, it just takes time.
So
Right.
this grant is kind of an area-wide grant for the airport
Yeah.
area to see what's highest, best use out there?
Yeah. It's not from the EPA, so it's not an area-wide, but I'm thinking we should do a similar kind of study, one that looks at impacts around the area, neighborhood traffic, to kind of really have an idea other than just one little sliver
Right,
without examining other issues.
okay.
I would, I guess, wonder if we have to get to the end of a study such as that to actually be looking at temporary storage units in that area. But
Can do more immediately.
And what does temporary
Sorry.
mean? What does temporary mean?
Like shipping containers for temporary, we move them in an hour.
yeah,
If council would like us to look into that, we can.
yeah, I certainly
I would. Yep.
like a reasonable request. And
Okay.
Yep.
Before we would do anything, we would bring it back to you, because nothing, as we know, nothing is like really temporary. So I want to make sure you're on board with whatever we do, because I sign like the airport hangar leases. I'm sure this would be something I could probably do administratively,
Ground lease.
but I think we should bring it back to you,
Would that have to go through P&Z too?
I think depending on what it is.
Yeah, and I guess part of that information too would be, and I look out there and I just see a lot of hangars lined up. I don't know if they're all occupied or they are.
And there's a wait list. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I can fill 15 hangars right now if I got permission to build them.
If I could give you that permission, I would.
I think we look into that.
Yep.
Okay, we will, I'll ask Tanya to look into it and see what it would take, and we'll bring it back.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sounds great. Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to make any comments? Come on up, sir.
My name is Charles Knuth. I live in rural Carbondale, and I'm an airport user as well. I wrote a letter and shared it with Amy Helm, the airport manager, this afternoon. I may have been presented at that workshop, but if you wouldn't mind, I'll read it. It's a brief letter. This letter is written to urge City Council to lift the current moratorium on space leasing and construction at Glenwood Springs Municipal Airport. I own and operate a Cessna 206 airplane flying year-round for business proficiency training, charitable contributions for Angel Flight West, and personal travel. I lease a hangar at Rifle and drive there from Carbondale, but would greatly prefer to base at Glenwood Springs if suitable space were available. If Glenwood Springs were open to new aviation construction, I would pursue the development of a hangar and office building of 4,000 to 5,000 square feet. The building would provide space for 2 to 3 aircraft, as well as office space for my current business. I would also offer primary pilot instruction as I expect to complete my CFI certification in 2018. Glenwood Springs Airport is a unique and irreplaceable asset to the community whose potential has not been fully realized. Council is urged to take this crucial step to enable the growth of our vital and valuable aviation community. Please contact me if I can provide further information or support. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
May I leave this with this?
Sure. Go ahead and give it to him. Thank you. All right, is there anyone else who would like to make any comments about an item?
Sure.
All right.
My name is Carrick Swanson. I'm a small business owner in Carbondale. I reside in Carbondale, and I own a window and door distribution company, and we're growing into various mountain communities like Telluride and Crested Butte, and to do presentations for architects and back that business plan up. The ability to fly to these locations, to say the least, is a fraction of the effort it would take to drive them. So it is an integral part of my business and the business growth there. Not to mention the future aspirations I personally have with the aviation, from an instruction, ground school, and flight instruction aspirations that I have too as well. So currently sharing hangar space with somebody else. Very fortunate to have that space right now with a fabric covered airplane. It is a little inconvenient because one person has to push one airplane out in order to get theirs out, and it's subject to not only it's just the inconvenience of it, but also the risk of damage. So if there was an ability for me to occupy my own hangar out there, I would be talking about that immediately. So thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, is there anyone else who would like to comment on any items not on our agenda? All right, seeing none, I will close that and bring it back to council for any council comments. Who's first? Todd.
So just a comment on the aviation folks that came tonight. One, I appreciate you coming. I was on the airport board liaison to council for 5 years, I think, and being in the real estate business, I would constantly tell them, you guys got to make yourselves more valuable. You got to make yourselves as valuable as you can to the city and show that there are other uses than just the 60 private pilots that fly out of there. So I think today was a good day for the airport as far as, you know, you guys are showing up and bringing other ideas to us that we hadn't heard before. Businesses that use the airport in different ways than just for fun. And so it's time right now for the airport to stand up and say, hey, we're out here and we're valuable and what we can do for the community. So anyway, I appreciate it. I see the value of that out there. And with Southbridge on its way, hopefully sometime soon, you're going to just need to keep providing value to the city and show that, you know, why you deserve to be out there. And it'll be a council's decision long probably after I'm off here. But personally, I like what's out there, and I think it could be expanded. I think it could be a great asset to continue to grow. So that's just my personal opinion. I wanted to throw that out there, and I appreciate you guys coming.
Thanks, Todd. Kathy.
I just wanted to thank Annette and the Elks for bringing Burgers badges to us one more year. I appreciate everything you guys do to support our first responders, and just thank you very much and encourage everybody to attend.
I would concur. Thanks, Kathy. Rick.
Yeah, I just want to take a moment and introduce to you a law student from Stellenbosch University in South Africa who's visiting the council tonight and also visiting the Voorhees household. His name is Ferdinand Botha. Ferdinand, would you just stand up and wave at us a little bit and welcome?
All right, any other comments? I have one. It is that time of the year when we are looking to refill all of our various boards and commissions, and we have a number of seats available. So this is just kind of a public announcement. I would encourage any interested individuals to contact Catherine Fletcher, our city clerk. But we have seats available for the Building Board of Appeals, the Financial Advisory Board, the Historic Preservation Commission, the Parks and Recreation Commission, Planning and Zoning Commission, the River Commission, Tourism Promotion Board, the Transportation Commission, and the Victims and Witness, they changed the name on that one. Victims and Witnesses Assistance and Law Enforcement Board, which is the Vail Board. Anyway, I would encourage any interested individuals to please contact Catherine to apply for those boards.
Can I just add one?
Sure.
To that our community lost a valued member with the passing of Don Vanderhoof, and I just would like to express our condolences to his family and thank him for his years of service to this community.
All right, thank you. I agree with that as well. I failed to mention that. Any other comments? All right, moving on to the consent agenda, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion by Kathy and a second by Rick to approve the consent agenda. All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Next, we have a presentation by the Small Business Development Center. Not sure who's here. Rick.
Good evening, everybody. Bear with me while I load my 100-slide PowerPoint for this evening. It's really 8 slides. My name is Dustin Kelly. I'm the Regional Director for the Northwest Small Business Development Center. And thanks for having me this evening. I know we've had conversations in the past, and I know Jen presented last month a little bit on some of the work that we're trying to do moving forward. So I want to spend some time just discussing the expansion efforts of the Small Business Development Center, specifically for Glenwood Springs, and that's the purpose of today's activity. Those of you who are familiar with the author, Simon Sinek, traditionally I think when we have these presentations, we talk about what the Small Business Development Center is, how we implement that, and then if we get to it, we talk about the reasoning behind why we're having the conversation. And he talks about flipping that model on its head and starting with the motivation itself. Let's start with the why are we having this conversation, and moving into the process of how we implement a greater presence from the Small Business Development Center, and then going into what is the SBDC. So I'm going to take that tact this evening. It's just maybe 5 minutes of your time to dig through some of the reasoning behind why we're having the conversation. The key focus is really to establish a future of work for Glenwood Springs, and overarching that would be the primary why of why we're having this conversation in the first place. When we look at some of the situations when we're dealing with entrepreneurship, specifically in these rural communities, we're looking at startup formation dropping nationally by about 2/3, and a lot of that is attributed to rural markets such as Garfield County and Glenwood Springs specifically, where we see a 50% drop of where we were 10 years ago at this time in new startup and business formation. So it's obviously concerning for the sustainability of these communities as we look forward and handing it off to our children and our children's children. Part of the reasoning is losing a lot of these small businesses to more urban markets with more established entrepreneurial ecosystems. I just presented here a couple of the key elements that are in place in order to have a thriving entrepreneurial ecosystem. These components need to work unanimously together in order to solidify a strong entrepreneurial environment. And I'm not saying here that the Small Business Development Center is the catch-all for all of these activities to work in harmony with one another, but it certainly is a support structure for each one of these categories in order to bolster the entrepreneurial ecosystem for Glenwood Springs. The how we do this as a Small Business Development Center, the first thing we have to do is establish resources in our markets. So that's the purpose of this conversation, is talk about establishing the resources in support of Glenwood Springs businesses. And in order to move on to that second category of building infrastructure, and what I mean by that is establishing a network of consultants that operate from Glenwood Springs and from Garfield County for Glenwood Springs businesses and for Garfield County businesses. Another component of the infrastructure is also having a place for programming to take place and where consulting needs to take place. We obviously can't move to building an infrastructure unless there's resources in place to be able to make that move to that second step. The third is advancing awareness, and that's just filling the pipeline with potential clients in need of support and mentorship and finance and funding. The fourth component and the final component is how we manage growth as an SPDC as we continue to move forward, continuing to fill the pipeline, continuing to develop and advance awareness, continuing to work on those key components on that previous slide that really make up the foundation of what an entrepreneurial ecosystem looks like. We call markets that help on a localized level with the efforts of the Small Business Development Center, we call them champion markets. Currently, Garfield County is a champion market. Garfield County has committed funding to 2018 to support this effort. So Glenwood Springs is currently within that champion market. How we define champion market is those that provide physical space, those that help with awareness and filling the pipeline with small businesses in need of support, and offering financial resources in support of the effort which we're doing. The key component here that I want to get across is that any investment made by Glenwood Springs to the Northwest Regional SBDC office stays in Glenwood Springs. Every dollar that's committed stays here. I don't get a raise, although I'd like one for every dollar that I raise, but that's not the case. Every dollar goes directly into the consulting effort and the programming that we issue here. This is just a map of some of the items that we are proficient in as an SBDC, where we can come in and provide some support, whether it be from the local consultants working from Garfield County, or whether that be from one of our other 14 centers within our Colorado network of resources. We've got hundreds of consultants that can come into this community and provide additional support. And there's reciprocation, obviously, for the investment and the commitment made by Glenwood Springs into the development and sustainability of the Small Business Development Center. And that symbiotic support comes in our consulting jobs. They are paid roles for those consultants within this community servicing these small businesses. We offer programming based on the need of the community, so we have a network of advisors within the community that help advise us on where the need is, and we build programming accordingly. Operations, our host company runs the entire operations for the 11 county region that we oversee, so we take that off the plate of the local community. We provide marketing support, and also our metrics are very specific. They're impact driven, they're presentable, they're what we can bring to you and say, here's the tangible impact that we've had as far as influence on the business community. And then, as I mentioned before, you have the capacity as a community to have advisors at our various meetings to help us with discipline and make sure that we're providing the right amount of support for the local community. This is an outlook of a 3-year outlook of what Garfield County has produced through the SBDC from 2014 to 2017. These numbers are based on zero financial support from Garfield County and from the local municipalities within Garfield County. That's not to say that it's the fault of the communities. It's the fault of the SBDC for not coming to the communities and making these requests in order to support SBDC efforts. So the 418 hours, contact hours over the 3-year period were primarily from a distance. So that would be our consultants operating in a market of funding like Summit County and contributing from usually a remote source in support of local businesses in Garfield County. Very few of those hours were one-on-one. We're trying to reverse that trend and have consultants on the ground working directly and cohesively with the business owners. And on the left-hand side of that slide, it shows our metrics and our impact and how we measure success in the market. So we're based on the amount of contact hours, which creates jobs, jobs retained, sales increase, capital formation, and business starts. So that's how we measure our success as an SBDC. And these are the specific goals that we're going to highlight for 2018. Again, we've got funding in place from Garfield County, but we do need additional support from the municipalities to subsidize the effort. Essentially, Garfield County, Glenwood Springs would receive about 1/7 of the commitment of what Garfield County has put in. As the population center for Garfield County, I'm assuming that $1,500 or so will get spent fairly quickly. It's about 40 hours of consulting time. That's what that translates to. That's something we can burn through pretty fast and pay down pretty fast. What we're looking for is a $10,000 subsidy so that when that $1,500 is paid down from Garfield County's commitment, then we won't miss a beat. We'll continue to support the business community for the remaining period throughout the year. And with that, I'll open it up to questions.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions?
How do you measure jobs retained?
Jobs retained, anything that's measurable from the SBDC requires at least 5 hours of commitment or face time between the entrepreneur and the consultant. So when you sit down, the process of this is you sit down with the consultant, you create goals with that particular client, and you'll say, they'll let you know that we're potentially going to need to cut 10 employees this month because we can't make payroll. One of our goals is to retain those 10 employees. So that would be the task that consultant works with directly with that client. And then after that 5-hour period of one-on-one, we would measure that to see if indeed we retain those 10 employees. So goal-based measurements.
Okay.
Kathy?
Dustin, tell me a little bit more about how you manage Glenwood's needs from Summit County, which is, you're in Summit, is that where you are now? Or
I'm at an Eagle.
Eagle, okay.
And the effort is fiscally managed from Eagle County. So that means that we're the host and we're responsible for the fiscal management of the office. But the true faces of the SBDC are the consultants that are on the ground in this community. So we're in the process. We currently have 1 full-time consultant over here. We're going to onboard another 5 consultants in the community on a part-time basis. So we'll have 6 faces within the community representing the SBDC.
And how long do you anticipate it will take to get the other 5 on board?
We had a call for consultants in Carbondale last month. We had 20 show up for 5 roles. So I'm fairly certain by the end of this month we will be fully staffed. You guys are welcome to join as consultants if you're interested too. We're still hiring.
Thanks. Rick?
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. A quick question, what are the connections that your center or your consultants would make, like with workforce investment boards, people who are unemployed, what kind of outreach do you have?
That is working with the local partners that we have on the ground, whether it be the chamber representatives, whether it be the workforce representatives, to help fill the pipeline for us. As far as how we operate, the inquiry will come in via phone from the referral, or they can sign up online through our site, and that generates the information into our system where we can respond accordingly. So a lot of the times we have chambers that are overwhelmed and workforce centers that are overwhelmed, that they're unable to respond to the development of a business plan or helping somebody with that first phase of startup. And I want to, just put it out there, we're not startup oriented. That's not necessarily what we do. We also do growth businesses. I worked with a business last week that had 34 years of experience and they needed assistance with an exit strategy. We didn't want to see the business go away, so we worked very closely with them to retain the business. So it's really a matter of utilizing our partnerships in these communities, which we've been in contact with, and they're part of our advisory committee on how to be a resource for them and how they can help us fill the pipeline.
So just real quick, if you're in Glenwood Springs, how would you make people aware that you're in Glenwood Springs?
The awareness, again, is working closely with the chambers as a pipeline, working with some of the co-working operations. We have one, I know, in Carbondale that I'm aware of. They're looking at starting another one in Rifle that I'm aware of, working with the EDCs as well to try to help fill that pipeline. But also, we've just onboarded a communication manager as well, and her task is to generate that awareness and focus completely on number 3 on behalf of getting that messaging out.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rick. Shelley?
That was part of my question too, was just on the, what type of marketing and outreach will you do in the community? So, I think you answered that pretty well. Do you do advertising though, over radio, newspaper, outreach
We
to
want to
the
be,
college,
that's
or-
a good question. We want to be diligent with your funds because obviously all of your funds are a pass-through, and the best use of those funds are consulting time. And so the more that we put into awareness and advertising, the less goes directly to the individuals, but we still have to build a pipeline regardless of that. So a lot of it is an effort of boots on the ground between myself and the communication manager coming over here, doing a lot of speaking engagements, in which we've got 3 or 4 lined up for first quarter here in this community, working closely with the advisory committees, having them go out and present the SBDC on our behalf so that we have an army of people filling that pipeline for us, in addition to just common sources like social media. If we can put together a newspaper campaign, and that's what the advisory committee wants to work towards, that's most definitely what we'll do as well.
Okay, and then as far as, you mentioned 5 additional consultants, so kind of 6 for this area. And I saw the list that they're, some somewhat specialized. I'm sure some maybe have a more general skill set. But if there's not a specialty here that someone needs, then how do they access that other specialty? Is it through the distance or online?
So a good question. That's the process that we utilize. So every call will go through me or go through my communication manager. We'll vet out that client and that call for legitimacy to make sure that it's a legitimate and it wasn't just an epiphany that they woke up with in the middle of the night and said, this is something I'm going to do, but I'm never going to do it. So we try to avoid those, and we make sure that it's legitimate. We vet it out. We have the conversation with them. We try to give them as many passive resources as we can. We give them templates. We give them things like that to just help them get to the point where they're serious about their business concept. And once it reaches that level, we first go to geography. So who is able to serve that need within Garfield County and Glenwood Springs?
Okay.
Second, we go to specialties. Usually the consultants that I onboard are generalists. There's somebody that can take somebody from idea generation to completion. And so that's what I'm primarily seeking, although we do have specialists. So if it's a field of something that one of our 20 consultants for the region can't help with, then we will go outside of the region. We'll find somebody and we'll pay for them to come up here and spend time with that individual client, or do a Skype meeting or something to that effect.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Thanks, Shelley. Kathy?
Couple other questions. Will this be an ongoing contribution that you will be requesting from the city, or will it increase, or?
We have a federal mandate to service markets that are non-contributing markets, and the results are what we saw in that previous slide. The more that the market is able to contribute, the more we can have face time with the clients, and that's what we're trying to establish: long-term programming, long-term face time. We won't know the answer to that really until 3rd or 4th quarter, when we've paid down the majority of whatever that contribution is. If it's $10,000, if we're tapped out of $10,000 by 3rd quarter because we've utilized all of that resource, that's a fantastic problem to have. And we would come back the following year with the larger ask. Right now, $10,000 is a great starting point to see how much the market need is and be able to see how quickly we can pay that down in order to determine the need for 2019.
And I guess that question also goes to the continued sustainability, of SBDC, particularly in this market. And I will be honest with you, I've had some negative experiences with SBDC, working for another organization, and it's a little bit of a concern to me. So for that reason, I guess I would ask whether or not you could provide financial information to us regarding operating.
We're pretty transparent. It's just kind of a general overlook. My salary is, as the regional director, is half with my host company and half with the SBDC. That's the same with my communication manager, and so that's where the state funding goes towards. So we're fully sustained within the state fund, which is $70,000 a year. Beyond that, the local markets are charged with funding their own operations and their own consulting efforts at that point. Again, if it comes down to there's no available funding and we pay down the $1,500 of available resources for Glenwood Springs, chances are that I would take those calls, or my communication manager would take those calls for those markets that are not funded or fully paid that down. So the fund enables us to continue the effort on the ground within that community. So everything would just be fully transparent as far as your investment. That $10,000 would go directly into programmatic awareness and consulting efforts.
So you partner, SBDC, it's the state partners with a host company. Is that
Correct. So we're a 501c3 learning organization. Our company is called the Vail Center. And this is a component on the spectrum that otherwise we don't oversee as an organization. We offer university-based courses for the local community. The cost to attend those courses are anywhere from $3,000 to $6,000 per participant. Not a lot of startup entrepreneurs are able to pay that for one of our courses. So the SBDC offers a need on our side where we can service for free to no cost to very little cost for those on that end of the spectrum to be able to service that. So that was our interest as being a host for the SBDC and servicing this region.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Jonathan?
What are other communities in Garfield County or the Roaring Fork Valley contributing?
This is the first ask we've had in first quarter for a municipality, but that's not to say that this is going to be the only ask. So we have an advisory committee meeting coming up on the 18th, I believe, in Rifle. Everybody's welcome to attend that, and I can send out invitations for that as well. And part of that is similar to this request and just letting them know they've got X amount of resources available and dollars from the county, and at this point, this is where you would need to pick up and provide assistance to subsidize this moving forward. So this is the lead effort because it's the population center for the county.
Thanks.
Any further questions? I have one for Deborah. Am I recalling correctly that you indicated, well, remind me where, if we were to choose to fund this, where it would be coming out of our budget?
I believe we budgeted 5,000, Jen? The rest, yeah, the rest would have to come out of my discretionary funding.
Okay. And where did the
not
original
departmental.
5,000 come from?
I believe it's in the city manager's budget. Are you not thinking? Yeah,
Okay,
where it used to be.
all right.
Do we not have any funds, sorry, on
Go
that
ahead.
line, do we not have any more funds available in the Financial Advisory Board grants? Or do we expend all those?
We have not awarded them this year yet.
Oh, right. We're in 2018.
Yeah,
Next year is coming.
Okay.
4 days in.
but
Old Todd.
you guys do control that money as well.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that would meet the grant, but it could. Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Is this an issue that I need to open up for public comment?
I would.
Okay. So thanks very much.
Thank you.
Would anyone from the public like to comment on this request to the city? All right, seeing none, I will bring it back to council for discussion or a motion or direction to staff.
Can I ask you a question, Deborah? You said we have $5,000 budgeted for this particular organization and for this particular reason?
We had budgeted, I guess there had traditionally been $15,000 in the city manager's budget for this activity. We cut it back to 5 when we were thinking it was going to go in a different direction. That we talked to you guys about that, I think about 6 months ago, when it was going to be more local, based in Rifle. So we didn't take that money out of the budget, it's still in there. So there's still $5,000 just in my budget.
Okay. I mean, was it specifically for this
It was for this effort, a slightly different, and Jen, correct me if I'm wrong here.
The original idea was that the state was going to try to split the region into 2 regions and to have that local center be in Rifle. And the idea was that agency or another organization could be the host, similar to the way that the Vail Center is the host. And that effort didn't work out, and so that this is kind of a next generation iteration of trying to provide these services. So, so yes, for this purpose, but not specifically in this way, if that makes sense.
So, oh, Catherine.
Sorry, Kathy?
That's okay, no big deal. If I heard correctly, this is a 501c3. And so that basically would fall under your comment that we do have discretionary grants.
We do.
That might be a better route than coming this direction. So that would be my recommendation, is that and those are going out, the applications are online?
Not yet.
Not yet, shortly, like very shortly, yeah. My recommendation would be to tell them to go that direction.
If you guys decide to go that route, would you be okay with staff assisting in that effort?
If what?
Assisting, tell me what.
In the grant writing effort, like,
In helping them write the grant for
Yeah.
that? Well, why?
oh, just because I think this is also kind of our initiative too.
Does that give this group an advantage over other 501c3s?
You guys make the final awarding decision, so I don't know if I would put my name on it, but I do think staff supports this general vision. So, but not if you don't want us to.
I guess my thought on that feels a little uncomfortable to me, and I would think that this group would have some grant writing capability if they have SBDC, that they have state backing. That's just my thought.
All right, thanks, Kathy. Shelley?
And Jen, do we have any other organization locally that's doing this type of work right now? I know we have in the past, on and off, but.
There was a nonprofit that was funded partially by the state, and maybe Dustin can help me with what that timeline was, a number of years ago.
Right.
And it was housed at the college, is my understanding.
But right now, we don't have it. And we had another small business person who was working, I think, kind of through the chamber and other groups downtown. I don't remember what it was called right now. But I guess I see this partially as business support and economic development, and I think I would like to see us use the 5,000 that's kind of designated for this right now in the budget. And I don't know if there's 5 more to come out of city manager budget, or if we would need to seek the 5 from the grant, but I would support that route so that we can make up the 10 to support the group.
Thanks, Shelley.
Because I think these are valuable services for the city.
Jonathan?
I completely agree with you, Catherine, in what you said about having nonprofits come to the Financial Advisory Board. And that's part of my push to kind of take that away from us and the city in general. That being said, I think this is an economic development issue, and I kind of see, at least my experience being a former human service provider nonprofit, that I've always viewed that Financial Advisory Board, again, when I was writing the grants, as more of a human service type organization. This seems more economic development, and it is kind of a city, is Jen, this is kind of your thing as economic development lead for the city staff. So I guess I'm willing, as much as it pains me to to say, I might disagree with you on that. I know, because I totally agree with you. So I would make a motion that we fund this for $5,000 with a contingency for another $5,000 if Rifle, which is, well, it is about the same size as Glenwood, if they come back and say it's 10, I'd put forth in my motion that we would fund an additional 5 to match Rifle. So we kind of put Rifle on the spot to say, if this is valuable enough to you, Rifle, to put in 10, we'll put in another 5. But I would dedicate the 5 right now tonight and feel okay about it. Does that make sense, what I just motioned? Okay.
Kathy?
I got the intent of it. I said, I got the intent of what Jonathan said.
Oh, okay. We don't have a second on that.
For sake of discussion, I will second that.
Okay. I guess my concern with that is that I don't think we've got a really, sorry, Jim, a really clear economic development plan yet. So I guess rather than piecemealing this, I guess I would rather see how this particular thing fits in with the broader economic development strategy that we might have. So that's just a thought.
Can I ask Jen a question?
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
didn't push my button, sorry about that. So my only concern, I mean, I'm all for helping with economic development and small businesses, and I think that's a good, wise investment for a community to make. Are you, Jen, are you concerned of the physical location? I mean, if this thing were on Grand Avenue in downtown Glenwood, I don't think we'd probably be done with this discussion. I think at least that's the feeling I get. There's a little hesitancy of using City of Glenwood Springs' tax dollars to go to an entity that isn't located in Glenwood Springs. That's just a guess, but again, I'm looking for reasons to support the effort.
I think what I hear is that there are businesses that struggle, that would like to have some access to services and have maybe gone to the Small Business Administration for funding, and they're not sure exactly how to do that. They're looking for support, and we don't have the capacity to provide all of the services. And so there is this organization that does provide them on the state level in these various regions, and we would certainly send folks here. I've heard from the chamber that they're not sure sometimes where to send people, and so I think that we would work together to make sure that folks who are looking for those services would be able to get them. And the commitment is to have those folks locally, and if not locally, to provide them from other, regional areas. I hear your concern, and I think that I understand that there's history there as well, and so, but I do think that we are not right now necessarily meeting the needs of those businesses that are looking for those services.
Well, this would obviously not be the first time that the City of Glenwood Springs supported a regional effort. We do that all the time. I mean, through RAFTA, through all kinds of different entities that were supporting regional efforts. So that sounds like that's kind of the answer. This is, the state sponsors this in a way, I mean, or at least to some extent. And we don't have anything here locally to send them to, at least in our city limits. So this is a regional effort. Is that kind of the?
That's it exactly, and I think that we'll be looking to do more regionally in terms of economic development through the work that AG&C is doing, through the work that the county is doing to try to bring all of the folks who are economic development professionals together to talk about providing those services. So I think that there's a growing effort to work regionally on this issue.
Okay.
And I would say we do a decent job right now on bigger economic development initiatives. We don't really have a lot of resources for small businesses, and while we don't have a perfect plan yet, and we probably will never have a perfect plan, I do know this kind of thing is part of the plan, just as, helping large retailers come to town, or doing, beautification projects, or this is a basic building block.
Okay, I'm good.
Perhaps I heard incorrectly, but did you indicate that if whatever funding we were to provide, that was all going to be used on consultant fees in Glenwood Springs. Did I hear that correctly?
Yeah, I wanted to distill that really quick or dispel that really quick. And although the money does travel to the fiscal manager, being the Vail Center, the money stays locally in Glenwood Springs. So we pull from the local community, primarily the 6 consultants here that service this community. We just write the checks to those individuals in order to put on the programming. So it's not going to a regional entity, it's going to Glenwood Springs.
Okay, that helps me. Thank you.
Shelley?
I just wanted to say I'm in support of the motion. My only hesitancy is the tie-in with rifle and kind of putting.
And I think, I don't like being, if you were to come to us and said, hey, Rifles put in $7,000, Newcastle's throwing in a couple, Carbondale hates small business, they didn't give us anything, and now we're coming to you, then I would have some gauge in with a larger community. Part of a regional effort, whether it be RAFTA or the Rural Water Association or whatever, is we all pitch in together. And so I guess my motion was based on, I want a bunch of Rifle City Council people to go, boy, I don't want to put in 10, but, I'm going to because there's leverage money up. And I think, that's a $15,000 swing. If they can't get Rifle, then I don't know if I want to be the only municipality in Garfield County that is doing this.
Yeah, I just feel like if the money is going to stay primarily in Glenwood and fund Glenwood, I know that our budget is quite a bit different than Rifles, and so I'm comfortable just funding it for a level of 10 on our own, or either doing the 5 and having them come for the grant.
We could do the 5 and see how it works, and
Yeah.
track it and see how we like it, and then if it works really well, we could do more next year.
Or do more mid-year.
Do you have an idea of what you would have an ask of a community like Rifle? Or have you gone that far?
Yeah, no, we've had the conversations with Mike and those over in Rifle. They're fully in support of this. They were at our meeting over at Garfield County and they presented on behalf of this. I don't know specifically what their budget is as a municipality. I can't speak to that. But they definitely have support for the SBDC. And, they become kind of the next ask. We're going to go to each one of these municipalities and have a similar meeting to this. But a lot of them said if Garfield County's in, then we're in. So Garfield County was in. So these, that was kind of that litmus test, if you will.
I think it's an interesting motion, and we can always change it. I mean, we can always readdress the second 5 if Rifle says no. We can still change our minds.
Yeah.
It's not like this is the end all of all discussions on this issue tonight. So I think it's an interesting motion.
Rick?
Yeah, I would just say that in the sway of things and people who come to us for money, this is an organization who's staked itself to some pretty significant outcomes here. And significant return on investment. If it's not realized next year, I guess we could be, in a different boat. But if we send this group to the financial advisory group, that may, produce some dividends too, because I think we need to be talking about with public money outcomes and the intended outcomes and what people plan to do with the money and how they plan to spend it. And, that kind of takes us out of to know us is to love us. And I don't think, that your presentation was anything like to know us is to love us. I think you've got some really strong metrics. And $10,000, may be, not a lot in the city budget, but on the other hand, we have a group here that's willing to be accountable now. And so, I would say, we could chip away at this and have this fellow come back to us in a few more months and, see if the $5,000 would be there. But my feeling is with everything we've got going on, if we can find the $10,000 now, I think we ought to do it and hold your feet to the fire for the outcomes. And, the next time that you come see us, you won't be looking for money, you'll be reporting good news. So that's my 2 cents.
Thanks, Rick. Kathy?
Just to build on that, I think, first of all, I'm totally in support of economic development. and I'm totally in support of small businesses, so that's why, for me to take this stance is a little incongruous, but I think I could support your motion if we do $10,000 or $5,000, and if SBDC would report back to us in, say, 6 months and give us some specifics, give us, how many hours, what types of businesses they've served, things like that. Just sort of go to those outcomes, those metrics a little bit. So,
Can I amend my motion?
Can you clarify it, or?
I will amend the motion to be 5,000 now, and then come back after we find out what Rifle's doing, after we get some metrics, find out the businesses, find out the outcomes, and then I think we can revisit that for an additional 5, because that's coming out of your discretionary budget, and we have no snow on the ground.
What?
Have no snow on the ground.
Yes.
Do you have an idea when you'd want to bring it back?
I would leave that up to
I would say like 6 months, maybe, or
Right.
4 months.
4 months.
You know,
Yeah,
I
four
mean,
to- four to 6
$5,000
months.
is not very much, so.
Yeah, I'd say 4 months in.
6 might be better if you want them to be able to really report on some success.
6 months?
Either that, or if they're so successful that they're out of money, then you might have to come back.
Yeah.
sooner.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say 4 months and keep it at 4, because I think you'll burn through that in 4 months, and if you don't, then maybe that's the metric.
So
We
just
need
out
a-
of clarity, the motion kind of went on and.
Yeah, yeah.
around and-
$5,000 on motion right now, and encourage the applicant to come back in 4 months. That's it, it's just clean.
Okay.
And is that to come back through the financial advisory board?
No,
or
I'd
just
say come back
to
through
us?
here,
Yeah.
and I guess I would encourage the fellow counselors to look at what other communities contributed in addition to the outcomes, and then make a decision just clean at that point in 4 months.
I second that.
Oh.
I second the amendment to the motion.
Yeah, he seconded the first one, so I
Yeah.
think he should at least
Yeah.
comment on the.
Yeah, I'm fine.
You're
I
good?
second
Okay.
the amended motion. Any further questions or discussion? Let's go ahead and call the question.
Trucker, yes. Goldish, yes. Davis, yes. Gamble, yes. Elaine, yes. Burgess, yes. Cow, yes. Motion passes unanimously.
All right, thank you. Thanks for coming. Thank you, guys. Thanks, Jen. All right, next item, source water protection plan update. Not sure who is presenting this item. Hi.
Hello. All right. Hello, Glenwood Springs City Council. I am Paul Hempel. I am the Source Water Protection Program Manager for Colorado Rural Water Association. I'm going to be giving the bulk of the presentation, but Chad Rudow of the Roaring Fork Conservancy is also going to be presenting some of the work that they've been doing up here in the valley. Thank you for this opportunity to present this great project, the City of Glenwood Springs Source Water Protection Plan. I also wanted to thank Robin and Jerry for setting this up so we can present this plan to the council. The creation, the development of the City of Glenwood Springs Source Water Protection Plan took about 3 years, and we finalized the document in December of 2014. A little bit of background about our organization. Our mission is to help small and rural communities provide a safe, dependable, quality water at an affordable cost to the customers. We are located in Pueblo West. Every state has a rural water association, and historically over the years, rural water associations have offered assistance to public drinking water and wastewater utilities. We help them with technical and regulatory issues, and we offer trainings for their operators so they can become certified to run their plants. Our source water program is funded by both the Colorado Department of Public Health and the Environment and the USDA. And over the past 9 years, we've held the biggest contract with the State Health Department in conducting source water protection planning. This funding has allowed us to support right now 2 full-time FTEs, and the USDA positions also support 2 full-time equivalents. We look at source water protection as the first barrier to help protecting drinking water sources. In a general sense, we take a look at potential contamination to those drinking water sources. So, for instance, the aftermath of a wildfire debris flow to a reservoir, or a truck spill to a nearby groundwater well, or uncontained storage tanks that might spill and influence a surface water supply. Why protect drinking water supplies? Well, for all of these reasons. Protect a valuable resource, public health, reduce the risk of contamination, the cost for treatment, to coordinate land use, and for every project we've worked on statewide, the State Health Department has offered a $5,000 grant for the water providers to develop and implement a plan. Again, our organization doesn't get any grant money because of our contract with the State Health Department. So in essence, our work comes for free to water providers in development and implementation of these plans. This basically spells out the steps to develop a plan, stakeholder involvement in the formation of a steering committee, the inventory and potential contaminant sources. We delineate source water protection areas, identify best management practices, and then implement those BMPs. So this slide sort of represents the steering committee we had for this project. Of course, it included Jerry, Terry Parch, Ron Biggers of your fire department was integral. Before Sherry became DA, she was in on our project as well. Morgan Hill of Garfield County Public Health. Carla Osberg, she has her own on-site wastewater treatment system business. We also engaged Tamara Allen and Andy Schaller during this process. They came to a meeting, and also Chad presented water quality of the Roaring Fork River at a meeting that is off this chart. But I certainly wanted to highlight Roaring Fork Conservancy's involvement in this project. It is at this point that I usually show the source water protection area maps and the intakes, but because we're in a public forum and want to maintain the integrity of these protection areas and where your intakes are located, I don't do it in this type of scenario. But when you guys got your packet or the copy of the protection plan, those maps are in there for your review. Once we identified and then prioritized the potential contaminant sources in the Grizzly no-name area, wildfire certainly came to the forefront as a important concern, outdoor recreation, and then tampering with the infrastructure. For your Roaring Fork intake, we looked at, actually this brings to mind, when I first met Jerry to begin this project, we were driving up to the water plant, and I took a look at the valley, and I explained to him that perhaps your biggest contaminant source for the Roaring Fork intake is the stormwater runoff coming from the city. We looked at that, from up there on that hill and saw where we were going with a big part of this project. So those potential contaminant sources really includes a lot of your commercial industrial operations within the city, transportation and roads, septic systems in the outer reaches of your protection areas, fuel tanks, residential, agricultural practices, stormwater runoff, a little bit of wildfire for that intake, and again, security concerns. Ultimately, at the end of the day, this is a pretty busy slide. These are the best management practices that the steering committee decided upon by the group. Many of these have actually been accomplished due to the steadfast work by Jerry Wade. And if you look at for instance, the commercial industrial operations, the residential practices and stormwater runoff, really what that included was a lot of education and outreach. You even may remember that back around early 2015, I worked with Jerry and we sent out a lot of this material hard copy, and you may recall getting it in the mail. And that is sort of the springboard for the second part of this presentation. And that is we are taking this education and outreach, which is essential to every source water protection plan, to another level. This is examples of the information that you may have received in the mail. And we also provided the city with these drinking water protection signs, which Jerry installed in various areas around the city. So if you see these as you're coming around the city, you know where they originated from. So we're taking this whole idea of education and outreach regionally, and we're calling this campaign the West Slope Source Water Protection Keep It Clean Partnership Marketing Campaign. Right now that's a pretty lengthy description of this project, but I think you'll see how we're meshing different ideas into this campaign. So a little bit of the history of this particular effort. When I started working up here in the Roaring Fork Valley back in 2012, I brought in all the water providers from Aspen, Snowmass, Basalt, Glenwood, Carbondale, and we had a meeting that actually kind of started to create a valley-wide vision for outreach and education. Over the next several years, me and my associates helped communities develop 32 source water protection plans in Eagle, Pitkin, and Garfield counties. That included all the major municipalities, like I mentioned, Aspen, Basalt, Snowmass, Carbondale, Glenwood, Newcastle, Rifle, Silt, Parachute, and Gypsum. And then after many of these plans were finalized, we reconvened the water providers and the watershed groups into a water provider summit to kind of figure out, if we had common interests in taking this education and outreach further. And we decided we did. In October 2016, I met with the watershed groups, the Eagle River Watershed Council, Middle Colorado Watershed Council, and Roaring Fork Conservancy to discuss and brainstorm how we might take this further. And then in November, we met again to advance the project and more efforts towards that brainstorming. In March 2017, we had a conference call with Keep It Clean Partnership. They're out of Boulder County, and they are doing stormwater education for residents, teachers, students, businesses, and it's a quite successful project that has had a great history in Boulder County. And rather than reinventing the wheel for our messaging, we negotiated with Keep It Clean Partnership. They are happy to allow us to use their materials and other outreach and education information for this campaign. Back in June, we were convening with the watershed groups to create a budget and project description, and at about that time, we also then reconvened everybody again in Carbondale as we were moving this whole project and vision forward. So In essence, we're collaborating with the water providers in the area, the county and municipal governments, and others. So our initial conclusions of our meetings were that outreach should include all the issues that were identified in the source water protection plans, that involvement from municipalities and counties was important to the project's success, that we needed uniform messaging throughout the watersheds with specific outreach in targeted areas where needed. And a lot of this is existing work that could lead to more efficient and targeted messaging. Our goals of the project are to help meet the education and outreach needs of drinking water providers in their communities by accomplishing the action items in the plan, launch a unified regional public awareness campaign, provide residents with user-friendly information explaining how their individual actions could affect drinking water supplies in an effort to institute changes in daily behavior. And another goal is to sustain the project over subsequent years. And the watershed groups, in their efforts over the years, are now combining and are going to help the water providers implement this project. That brings us to Keep It Clean Partnership. Again, I mentioned that this is a very successful program in Boulder County, and you can see at the top of this graphic the different areas that they work with down there in Boulder in this messaging. Our focus right now is on education to residents and teachers and school children. And one of the items we intend to use in this campaign is the sign that you see there. If you're driving around Boulder County, you see that sign just about at every stream crossing, and it notifies the stream in which you're crossing. So we're bringing those signs to the West Slope. Other items that are involved in our campaign are children's coloring books and other sort of children activities. We're producing a bilingual pamphlet, and you know, this information has existed in the past, and what we're planning to do with it now is to refine it to include the source water protection message within it. We've created these water utility bill inserts. This gets cut in half. It has a back to it, and it's meant to go into the water utility bills to educate the public. For those who pay online, we intend to work with whatever jurisdiction to try to get this material on the websites. Roaring Fork Conservancy has used a lot of Keep It Clean Partnership material and ideas in their work, and I'm going to hand it over to Chad briefly to explain that.
Great. Thank you. Once again, I'm excuse me, Chad Rudo with Roaring Fork Conservancy. I also happen to be a resident of Glenwood Springs. I live at 1201 Mountain Drive over in Glenwood Park there. So I know a few of you on the council, and I hope many of you know about Roaring Fork Conservancy, but just real quickly to make sure we're on the same page, Roaring Fork Conservancy is the watershed organization for the entire Roaring Fork watershed, Aspen to Glenwood, Meredith to Marble. That's the area we cover. We really focus in two main areas. One is watershed action, things like water quality monitoring, water science research, water policy work, even land conservation in riparian areas. That's our watershed action department. We also have a very, very large component of our organization that is our watershed education, and that's where a lot of this overlap comes with what Paul's been talking about. We provide watershed education for just about every school in the watershed, every grade range. In Glenwood, we work with every single public school as well as Two Rivers Community School, St. Stephen's Catholic School, Yampa Mountain School. So we do a lot of youth education, but we also do a lot of adult education in the form of any number of outreach events, things we call watershed explorations, where we get adults out to different parts of their watershed to learn more about different aspects of their watershed. So that's kind of who we are in a nutshell. We have been utilizing the Keep It Clean campaign for at least a decade now. We use primarily their education and outreach materials in the form of handouts that we might give out at an event or a local farmer's market or something along those lines, as well as the handouts that we give out anytime we're in a school program. They provide materials for the kids, but also materials that are going home that the parents can see in the process as well. So we've been using the Keep It Clean partnership and working with them for quite a long time now, and feel that the materials we get from them are very helpful and very successful. One little side note is the little guy in the picture up there is sort of the mascot for the Keep It Clean campaign. His name is H2O Joe, and it's a giant inflatable thing that shows up at a lot of events. Events we do, events that actually other West Slope entities have borrowed him and used him for these type of events. That will be another potential outreach tool that we could provide to source water providers if there's an applicable event or something along those lines. So we have had good luck with these tools and feel like this is a good fit for the work that we're doing, working with the source water providers. The last thing I wanted to mention is kind of at the basis of this, there's a very strong connection between the goals of the source water providers, which is, to provide clean drinking water for the residents, with what we're doing, which is trying to keep our streams clean and healthy. In our mountain communities, for many of us, our drinking water supplies come from our streams and rivers. So there's a very, very natural connection here for the work we're trying to do to keep our streams clean and healthy, and the work that the source water providers are doing. And that's what makes this such a great fit for this kind of regional project that we're all working on together. I think that probably does it for my part.
Good job. Thank you. I just thought I'd throw a little tidbit in my sort of passion for working on this campaign in the Roaring Fork Valley. Our organization is located in Pueblo West. I live in Boulder, but I used to live up here. In fact, I got a job and worked with the Roaring Fork Conservancy for a couple of years at the turn of the century. Since then, moved on and have now worked under this program for 9 years. I'm very passionate about this valley. I love it. The people are great. There might be a time when I actually move up here, but there's sort of an underlying reason why I've been taking the time to help, engineer this regional campaign. We've had discussions with, again, the watershed groups and water providers in our regional area. So with that, I'd like to open it up to any questions.
Thanks, Paul. Any questions? Rick?
Yeah, thank you for your presentation, Paul. I think we'd welcome you if you decided to move up here. Anybody that's interested in protecting water has got to be pretty special. So are you involved with Roaring Fork Conservancy's new water management plan for the Roaring Fork in any way?
Well, the great thing about this project that we're spearheading is that it fits perfectly in the watershed plan, both regionally in this watershed and really statewide in terms of promoting education and outreach. So we see that as an important avenue into making this campaign happen. The watershed plan kind of laid the groundwork for future activities and on-the-ground activities, and I think this campaign is a natural fit.
Well, I'm on the Rudai Water and Power Authority Board, a group which has neither water, power, or authority, but we're looking at the headwaters of, the Rudai watershed, I guess, coming down the Crystal and down to the Roaring Fork. And one of the big things that we've been working on is the aquatic nuisance species and how to abate that. And so, we're always looking for some help in that regard as well, since the municipalities pretty much contribute to make that happen. There's a state bill that I understand that the Colorado legislators are going to be considering this year to help with that. And We've had some mussels that have appeared up in Summit County, but so far we've been able to avoid that here. And I don't really have a point or a question for you other than just to say, you know, awareness-wise, it would be great to sort of fold that into your ongoing campaign for cleaner water.
Yeah, I agree. Aquatic nuisance species are a nuisance for sure. And, you know, as we're making the rounds, and I'm making the rounds throughout the region with this type of presentation, I'm garnering information like this, suggestions like this, that we're taking notes. And so I think ultimately when we launch this, we'll have that type of information in our outreach.
Great, thank you.
Shelley?
I was just curious about some of the signs you showed from Boulder, the Keep It Clean signs. Would those be going up, like we have, you know, trailheads that head up into our watersheds? Would those be going up along with kind of trailhead signs and those kind of places, or would the campaign mainly be concentrating on stormwater and more in town areas?
I think a combination. You know, we can't put these up on the state highway, and you know, would need county approval in other areas, and even, you know, municipal approvals. But we want to make sure that these signs are available where there's heavy traffic, whether it's foot traffic or, you know, stoplights, stop signs, bus stops, things like that. And really, it's sort of up to the regional jurisdiction to decide where they might want to put them in consort with rural water and the watershed groups, but they certainly could be placed in any spot that might be visible.
I had a question for you. Unfortunately, being a bit of a geek, I may be drilling down way too far on this, but on page 29 of your report, you provided in our packet, you list the potential contaminants in our no-name and grizzly watersheds, and you identify wildfire as the priority, as the #1 priority for focus. I'm just curious. You know, you do indicate that wildfire is out of our control, so if that's our #1 priority, what are we doing to prioritize that? I mean, how do we address that, I guess?
Well, for the grizzly no-name?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I would say that this project, the city of Glenwood got $5,000 worth of grant money. So, and Ron Biggers was an integral part of our planning process. So it's a good shout out to Ron. He's a great guy. And with $5,000, you can really only do so much. So in taking a look at the Community Wildfire Protection Plan for Glenwood, and seeing that that area up there is high risk, at least in the document, we've been able to describe some of the BMPs that we would like to do perhaps, or that your city might like to do with additional funding from other resources. Sometimes these plans, they knock off a good amount of education and outreach, maybe a little bit of security here and there, but they also act as kind of a needs assessment for future funding for larger scale projects like wildfire mitigation.
Okay. Okay, and I guess perhaps either of you may know the answer to this, Robin or Jerry might. When we had the coal seam fire, however many years ago that was, I know that burned into the No-Name Creek watershed. I don't know if it got into the Grizzly Creek watershed. Do we have any water quality data during and or following that demonstrates?
So the coal seam fire, that was the South King that went this way?
Yeah.
Okay, we really didn't see any effect in the No-Name watershed or the Grizzly watershed, but there were some years ago some wildfires in the Grizzly area and the No-Name area, unrelated to the coal seam, where we ended up, well, and I actually learned a lot from that, because one of the things that wildfires create is tree fall, because there's no vegetation.
Right.
The other thing that it creates is the burning of pine needles causes a high manganese So we started, in our discussions with the source water protection plan, we started thinking about, like you said, why is that such a high priority in the no-name area? Well, these two watersheds are so
Jerry.
pristine, so.
Come up.
Oh,
Yeah,
Not everyone's
sorry.
gonna be able to hear you,
oh.
Yeah.
like me.
Usually people tell me I talk too much. About
You have 3 minutes.
3 minutes? Okay. But at any rate, like in those two areas, that's such a pristine wilderness that you don't have any activity other than foot traffic from hikers, which I thought, and many people would have thought, that, wow, they could dump stuff in the creek on their way up. That's pretty unsecure. But, you know, when 9/11 happened, we went through this whole vulnerability assessment, which I wrote for the city. And I attended some meetings, and it really opened my eyes, because the first thing you think about is worst case scenario. Oh my God, you know, they could poison our water supply. But then once I backed up and came back to reality, it's like, why would they do anything to Glenwood like that? So, you know, those areas, foot traffic might be, they said that it would take such significant amounts of certain contaminants, which they identified, there was 6 of them, that they could never carry enough up there to create the contamination. So wildfire ended up being the big one, because it's common. It's a common occurrence. You know, you have dry years, you have lightning strikes, you have the camper that isn't safe, you know, those types of things. So that's why wildfire ranked high. And Ron, the way to mitigate something like that, I mean, obviously you can't control everything, like anything else, but you can go up and do, you know, maybe some backburn occasionally, or cut down some downed timber, or this outreach like Paul was talking about. You make them aware of, hey, you know, take care of the campfires. Hey, be careful, because you can start a fire or whatever. And with your question, you mentioned something about signage at the trailheads. Well, we currently do have some, even without this, I mean, the reason I had Paul and Chad come up tonight was I think it's important that you know what we've been working on. I've been working on this since 2010. I mean, it's an awesome program, and with these guys' help, it started initially as individual plans with individual goals. And so when I attended these meetings, I thought it was important that we don't have individual messages, that we have a common message like Smoke It Bear. You know that across the nation. You've got give a hoot, don't pollute. You know what that means. I mean, everybody knows what that means. So with a common message for source water up and down the valley, you know, from Aspen to here, using Boulder's example, I think that just makes sense. I mean, to have a common message. But sorry to dart back and forth. Sometimes I get a little out of control. But we do have some signs at Noning. We can only go so far with putting signage on Forest Service lands. If you walk to the trailhead at Grizzly, there's a really nice trailhead sign that gives an awesome description of the water source at Grizzly. You know, you can only do so much to protect. You can't take care of every threat, but we're trying to be proactive. And, you know, I mean, these guys are doing a great job. I mean, it's almost virtually free. I mean, how could you not want to do that? So, yeah, I was really happy that the city allowed me to be part of that, and I'm very happy that these two guys were with us. You know, it's not just me. It's many people in the city that are part of this. I mean, we're doing storm drain stenciling as part of that grant. I hope I answered your questions.
Yep, you did.
I mean, if that helped. And,
yep, thank you.
Actually, there's a couple of links that we're going to put on the city website, so you can see we've actually worked on professional videos. I mean, video that's on there is awesome. You have to see it. There's a lot of
If you
things.
send me, when they're up, send me the links and I will send it to them.
Yeah, actually, the request was put in today to put it under the source water on our website. It's awesome. So I
Excellent.
appreciate your time.
Thanks, Jerry.
Thank you.
Yep. All right, any further questions for Paul? All right, thank you for your efforts on this. We
Thanks
appreciate it.
again, and if you don't mind me making a comment here, because I'd be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to Jerry. I mean, you guys probably realize that you have a superstar on your staff. And yesterday was his 40th anniversary with the city.
Ooh.
And and he's going to be mad at me for saying this. But really, Glenwood was the first city I started working on a plan with. And Jerry's interest, his engagement throughout the process was stellar. And we probably would not have gotten to this point without his support and enthusiasm. So again, Jerry, I can't thank you enough. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jerry is the water marshal. Don't get him started on cross connections.
All right, moving on to our next item. We have ordinance number 1, series of 2018, an ordinance of the City of Glenwood Springs, Colorado, amending section 070.130.110 of the Glenwood Springs Municipal Code to expand the impact and improvement fees available to be waived. This is a first reading. We have-
Good evening again.
Thank you.
In late 2017, we had a work session talking about impact fees. And one of the pieces of direction that we got from City Council was to look to expand the impact fees that are available for waivers for affordable housing projects that go into the opt-in program for rental units. So development fees for construction permitting, water sewer tap fees, water or sewer system improvement fees, school dedication requirements are all eligible for waiver under this program. However, parkland dedication was not part of that. And so this is an ordinance asking for parkland dedication to be one of those fees that can be waived if a developer meets the criteria and enters into the appropriate agreements. With that, I'm open to any questions that you may have.
All right, thanks, Jen. Any questions for Jen?
Jen, can you just remind me, how much is it on a per unit basis?
It's based on an acreage, and I'd actually have to look it up. I don't have it right here
Based on
with
square
me.
footage?
It's based on a price per
Per acre of
acre.
parkland required, and I think, was just looking at it yesterday, I can't remember the exact number, it's in excess of I'm gonna say roughly $240,000 per acre. But it's not if you're, it's not.
It's a portion.
But you do
Well,
a
yeah, but
fraction of
it's, there's a
acre.
calculation of how many acres of parkland a unit is required to develop or to provide, and I'm not
I
sure
can
what
pull
that
up the
number is.
spreadsheet if you'll give me a second.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it's,
Would you like me to do that? Let me just bring back in.
Oh, I'm just curious of a ballpark number of what the waiver is for a particular unit. You know, say a 700 square foot apartment or something. Just curious, kind of what that dollar
well,
amount is.
I do know the specific numbers for a 115 unit apartment project, and without any waivers, it would have been the total fee would have been roughly $480,000, but they were approved for a 50% reduction because they were providing some on-site
Open
parts
space.
and open space and facilities, and so they got a 50% reduction, so they're paying roughly $230,000 or $240,000, maybe around $250,000. I think they're paying for 1.1 acres of parkland at the 200.
But none of those units are opted in to the
Not at
deed
this point,
restriction.
no.
Thanks.
Rick?
Yeah, just a quick question for you, Jen. The agenda says that in 2016, City Council in its wisdom, established a new affordable housing program. Do we have any stats on or outcomes that would suggest that, you know, we're at this point, we need to go to that point, at this point?
We've had a few folks who have entered into the program, and others who have expressed interest. I think the only folks who actually inked the agreement is the Cardiff Mesa development that is partially with the school district. And my understanding is that they, both the school district units and also the other units that the developer has, so it's 21 units at Cardiff Mesa. And there have been others who've expressed interest in whether or not they've actually finalized those agreements. I'm not certain. There are likely to be another handful of those.
I don't think it's been around long enough or enough units have been for us to have any measurements.
Yeah.
But I know that we've put together from a template that we've developed there's several deed restriction agreements based off of this section of the code, and I think that it's just waiting to complete development to really have those kick in.
And it's, Rick, it's my belief and understanding here that this isn't actually an expansion of that as much as it is cleaning up something that fell through the crack. When we put that together, we kind of anticipated that we were waiving this fee at the same time that we crafted that ordinance, and it just didn't get thrown in.
I just think in a long-term kind of housing strategy, it'd be interesting to, you know, set some targets out there that we could eventually, you know, look back on and say, this worked, this didn't work, or here's where we're going. So.
And we'll certainly be tracking it. And it hasn't really been in effect for that long.
Because it was new units, and as we all know, new units take a while to build.
Oh, sure. You gotta learn how to walk before you run, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, any further questions? Oops, I'm sorry, Shelley.
I had a question on, so I think the previous housing policy we had for inclusionary housing, that did not waive parkland fees, did it, Jen?
I don't think so.
I don't think it did. And so I thought maybe this rental policy was kind of modeled after that. And I guess I'm curious to ask Brian, since you're here, can I ask you a question? Sure. What kind of impact does it have on our park and recreation system to add 150 units? I mean, I guess I'm wondering it doesn't, I think that maybe it doesn't really matter on our parks and recreation system on whether a unit is deed restricted or not. You're still bringing in a new unit into the city. So is there any way to quantify the impact of additional units on our parks and rec system?
As far as additional maintenance costs to existing parks?
And operating costs and services to provide, things like that.
I don't know if we have a way to quantify that as far as an individual housing complex. You know, we do a calculation for park impact fees that are associated with those, and if there is parkland that the developer provides, whether it's as part of a variance to that or an agreement with the city for that, you know, obviously then it's easier for us to calculate the addition of those parklands and the maintenance costs associated with the addition. But as far as we could do it per person. Yeah, we can calculate it out as a population equation.
Do you
how
know
that might.
That number approximately off the top of
I
your
could
head?
get those numbers for you if you wanted. What an average impact for, we're talking about 125 units might be.
Okay. Is this, I mean, it's a real impact to the city going forward, and we're not giving, well, I guess, yeah. I just just have mixed feelings on whether, since this is a rental property, who's the fee deduction going to? It's going to the developer. I don't know that it's, I don't know. I have mixed feelings on how it will really affect affordability in the city.
It's going to the developer in exchange for lower rents.
For the deed restriction,
Yeah.
for a 30-year deed restriction. Okay, thanks, Brian.
Kathy?
Going to make a motion if you guys are ready.
Well, I think we got to open up for public
Oh, that's
comment first.
Never mind.
Yes.
Jonathan?
Yeah, I think Shelley just worked through what I was working through. A deed restrictive, one person living in deed restriction, I'm going to ask Jen, is this kind of the case, is the same impact as somebody living in free market or anything else? And so whether that be fire service, EMS, any other kind of impact fee, if I'm understanding it right, this is just the last piece of giving us the flexibility to waive fees for people who are trying to create more affordable / attainable housing. Is that the gist?
Yeah.
Great.
It's just an incentive to create more of a common good in a way.
Yeah, I mean, there's no scenario where somebody in deed restriction creates less impact than somebody not.
No.
No.
Great. Okay, that's all.
We could help on producing parks.
No. I'm thinking that would not be legal.
I think she's right, but it was appreciated.
I just don't think we should have Gary respond if there's a fire there.
All right, on that note, I will open it up to any public comment. Anyone from the public wanting to comment on this ordinance? Seeing none, I will close it to the public and bring it back to council.
I would move to approve ordinance number 1, series of 2018, an ordinance of the City of Glenwood Springs, Colorado, amending section 070-130-110 of the Glenwood Springs Municipal Code to expand the impact and improvement fees available to be waived.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Catherine and a second by Jonathan to approve ordinance number 1, series of 2018. Any further questions or comments? Let's go ahead and call the question.
Trucker, yes. Goldish, yes. Davis, yes. Gamba, yes. Leahy, yes. Voorhees, yes. Cowden, no. Motion passes.
All right, moving on, ordinance number 2, series of 2018, an ordinance of the City of Glenwood Springs, Colorado, amending section 020.020.030 of the Glenwood Springs Municipal Code pertaining to the powers and duties of the Glenwood Springs Arts and Culture Board. This is a first reading. Do you have any,
Just 1 second to clarify, Catherine did not vote no on the last one. The light looked like it went funny.
They're reversed, aren't they?
She said yes, she read it as yes.
Okay.
Catherine read it.
Okay.
You vote okay.
Yeah, because, the names are reversed up there.
Okay.
Oh, were they?
Yeah. Sorry.
Okay, I apologize.
Thank you. Thank you.
okay. All right, so, going back to ordinance number 2, series of 2018, do we have a presentation regarding the powers and duties of the Glenwood Springs Arts and Culture Board?
I don't know if it is a very sophisticated presentation, but I think you guys decided at the last meeting to tighten this up, and these are just very slight additions. It looks like you added,
We made some edits,
Mm-hmm.
right?
yeah, like promoting and collaborating among artists, art-related organizations, and opportunities for growth and exposure, and also that you wanted them to help you with fundraising.
I think there was a final change as well to include a youth representative.
Right.
Right, and that's not in here, and I noticed also, Mr. Mayor, that didn't make it into consent agenda on our first reading for the makeup of the board. So I guess we can do that in between the first and second
I
reading.
thought it had been forwarded. I know it's
Yeah,
not
it
on
had
this
been.
packet, but it had been forwarded to us, I guess.
Before it was done.
Yeah, I sent it as soon as the email
Yeah.
this morning.
Into the packet.
The new,
Yeah.
okay,
Okay.
so when I pulled it up here, it was still the old.
I linked it in the agenda and I added it into the
Okay.
boxes.
Yeah, it's-
But I think this is mainly just
Was
what
there-
you asked to do at the last meeting.
Now, didn't we already approve
Meeting
this on
for.
first reading? So why is this another first reading?
No, I don't think we approved it. I think we discussed it last.
Oh, okay.
Wasn't that?
I don't think I was here when you guys discussed it for some reason.
My understanding is that the Arts and Culture Board was approved, was it early December, and that subsequently you decided that you wanted to see some adjustments in the language, and so this is the result. So I think this is first reading for this change to the changes
I think
that
it was
you.
fully adopted.
Right.
And then I think you
Okay.
guys came back and asked
Okay,
for
'cause
changes.
For some reason, I thought the change could have happened between first and second reading, but if that's the case, that's okay. All right, any further questions about this? Anyone from the public wanting to comment on this item? All right, seeing none, I will close it and bring it back to council for a motion.
I'll make a motion. I move that we approve ordinance number 2, series 2018, for defining the powers and duties of the Glenwood Springs Arts and Culture Board.
Second?
We have a motion by Shelley and a second by Rick to approve ordinance number 2, series of 2018. Any further questions or comments? Let's go ahead and call the question.
Trotter, yes. Goldish, yes. Davis, yes. Gamba, yes. Leahy, yes. Voorhees, yes. Cout, yes. Motion passes unanimously.
All right, next item is ordinance number 3, series of 2018, an ordinance of the City of Glenwood Springs, Colorado, adopting a new section 120.040.040 regarding haul routes to the Glenwood Springs Municipal Code and setting forth the regulations and permit requirements for commercial hauling operations in the city. This is also a first reading.
So this pavement study had been discussed as a part of our 2017 budget. The goal of this pavement study was just to help prioritize our maintenance needs across the city. And so in July of 2017, we hired Applied Pavement Technologies out of Austin, Texas, to come and do a window shield survey of all of our roads. It's hard to see this very well. I don't know if I can do any better with the slide presentation, but over 50% of our roads showed up in poor condition, in a failed condition, which means that, they have to be either reconstructed, the subgrade be over excavated and reconstructed, or the asphalt needs to be ground and then the subgrade reshaped and reconstructed in that way. So substantial cost to the city over most of our network. We, after reviewing this from a staff level, we felt like it was important to bring it back to the council and show this pavement study, but also to try and take some steps to prevent further damage and to, keep our roads from, accelerating and becoming worse and worse. So one of those measures would be to designate potential haul routes through the city. It's been shown many times that heavier trucks and heavier vehicles cause additional damage to roads. We had very similar discussions, I think it's in 2016 with the FedEx facility out on Midland, where we were very concerned about trucks using that route. We've had those kinds of discussions in the past. So with that, we wanted to ask the council about potentially setting haul routes as a result of this pavement study. Let me see if I can get the haul routes to show up a little bit better than you can sort of see the color there. The haul routes would allow for trucks to move, somewhat internally to our network. Our preferred haul routes would be actually to have those heavier trucks and vehicles stay on State Highway 82 and on Highway 6. But we recognize that we do have some industrial uses, for instance, along Devereaux Road. We also have industrial uses near the airport that we were discussing earlier today. So we did show some additional routes that would allow trucks to make it through the 27th Street Bridge and to the south of town, as well as to access Devereaux Road Bridge and make it to, at least to, the UPRR area just before the Devereaux Road Bridge there. So it's, again, a proposal to council. It would be to help reduce and, well, not eliminate, but I guess reduce the damage to our already poor road condition. So I don't know, I guess with that, we have a list of vehicles that we've been working on. It's based on the FHWA lengths and weights. We want to further develop that before we really, include that in the ordinance. But at this point, we're aiming for a weight around 20 tons. So we'd like to finalize those classifications before we bring that to the council, but include it in the next reading of the ordinance.
Thanks. Terry? Any questions for Terry at this point? I have one. That 20-ton weight, is that also related to number of axles on a vehicle, or is it just 20 tons?
It is related to the number of axles. Once we get into, hopefully at the next meeting, I'll be more firm on those vehicles, but I can describe the different vehicle classes to you. Generally, once you hit the 3-axle configuration, you're headed above the 20 tons, that 20-ton weight limit.
Okay. Shelley?
Terry, just a question, some clarification on use of the haul routes then. So once we designate particular haul routes within the city, would, if there are commercial vehicles using those routes, would they be charged a fee, or would it be based on the weight, or would it just be a penalty if they're overweight, or how would that potentially work?
We would have a permit system, and I believe that permit system would allow the heavier vehicles to use those haul routes, but there would be some charge with that. Again, we haven't gone that far with our ordinance to determine what those fees might be.
Right, but based on maybe the impact to the condition of our roads, like
Right.
how much wear and tear it's putting on as opposed to just a normal vehicle.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
This might be a question for John. Right now there isn't any permit fees stated in the ordinance. I understand we'll get that adjusted before second reading, but oftentimes, am I correct that it's better to have the fees actually established by resolution just so that they're more easily adjustable, as opposed to including it in the ordinance, which requires 2 readings to approve in the future if we want to update or modify the fees at some point?
Yes, that's a pretty standard practice. The city sets most of its fees, or many of its fees, annually by resolution, or at least should be. So we can certainly adjust this ordinance to reflect that the fees will be set by resolution of council, probably on the recommendation annually of the city engineer.
Okay. Kathy?
Terry, on the ordinance, it indicates the haul routes as depicted on Exhibit A. I don't have Exhibit A here. Is that this?
That would be that,
Okay,
yes.
all right. Just wanted to clarify
Yeah.
that. I guess my concern with the haul routes that are currently designated as City of Glenwood Springs approved haul routes is that personally I would prefer to remove Midland from that designation, and I would say I would prefer to remove Midland from 114 to the south city limits, which it turns into Airport Road, I guess.
Mhm.
And
Airport
to-
Road
to-
and then our limit at 4 miles.
Just as far as our city limits extend, and also across the 27th Street Bridge and 27th Street from South Grand to South Glen. That would be my preference on that. So.
That just raises a question, before we get to your question, Rick, I apologize for jumping in here. So let's take City Market as an example. A fully loaded semi-truck delivering food to City Market is going to have to use 14th Street. They do today, every one of them does. I think some of them might even use Blake to point the right direction on 14th Street. How is that going to work with this ordinance?
I believe we would need to permit those trucks unless they wanted to use their direct access off of State Highway 82. We have an access control plan that eliminates some of those accesses to City Market, direct accesses off of Highway 82, but I believe there's at least one that remains open. So they could potentially still use that access without having to be permitted through our program. But if they are going to use 14th Street or Blake, I believe we would go ahead and try to permit those trucks.
And the same would apply for Target. You know, if we shut it off for all of Midland Avenue from exit 114 south, then any commercial trucks going to the Meadows would be required to be permitted.
You know, I apologize. I had forgotten about a provision in the ordinance that says that if the goods or deliveries are used within the city of Glenwood Springs, there is an exception. You do not have to be permitted. So it does allow for, City Market, for instance, where they're delivering groceries for use within the city to avoid that permitting process. Similarly with, I believe, places off of Midland, like Lowe's and Target and those kinds of places as well.
And it would also include construction, someone were building a home or a business and you had to haul in equipment or something like that. I would assume that would be the case.
Yeah, as long as it was specifically for use, by someone in our zip code. I believe we talked about that at one point in time. I'm not sure that that's clearly defined in the ordinance right now, but that might be a provision that we could add. It could be in the 8160601 zip code.
Because I'm not seeing that exception right now in the ordinance as written, but that'd be something we could adjust prior to second reading, I'm assuming.
Yeah, we can continue to tinker with the language. I'm not sure exactly what ended up into the packet for this, but yeah, deliveries for use within the city is something that we've already discussed and that we will ensure is there. The idea here, I think, is really to confine this to the major thoroughfares and on some level Highway 82, which, as we know, the state has authority and responsibility over, and off of the streets as much as feasible, without really being a hindrance to local residents and businesses. If a truck has to, deliver to City Market, deliver to Target, or simply, help somebody move into a new home, we don't want that to be an issue. We just want them to know that they have to be using Highway 82 and other designated hauling routes to the greatest extent feasible, and that they are only using side streets, other non-designated haul routes to reach the most direct point of access to their ultimate destination.
Okay. Sounds good. Rick?
So we'll probably have some language changes the next time that we look at this. I note that the ordinance itself says within Glenwood Springs, but we're, more or less focusing on people that want to use the haul routes to get through town. So the within may not be the best sort of preposition as you're thinking about rewriting this, John, maybe. But, the other comment is that this was posted on the website with the agenda and as mentioned by Catherine, that map wasn't with it. And
We were working, Terry was working on it until last night,
Okay.
so.
Yeah,
I
Terry.
apologize. Yeah.
I mean, you know, at 3 in the morning, could you possibly?
I could have
All
tried,
I'm
but
saying
Catherine
is like
wouldn't have
this.
let me. It's Catherine's
The
fault.
second reading, it would be good to have this map go with the agenda item, so the public, you know, I got a few emails and people said, you know, what do you mean haul routes, where are they? And I go, well, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I know how busy you are and how hard you work, but I think it'd be a good idea as well, just to make this a total package the next time we see it.
We agree, and it will be a total package.
Yeah, I'm sure it will be. Thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Davis.
I appreciate the comments from Councilor Trauger on Midland, particularly south, I guess, from 27th down to the airport specifically. Everyone knows that road is in horrible condition. However, my concern would be that we have 2 zoned industrial areas in Glenwood, and one of those is out by the airport. I think there's already some fabrication out there in the old pick and iron
I believe you're right.
location that continues. So I would agree to take that out of the haul route, because I believe that the intent is if any trucks are going in and out of that industrial area, that they'd be exempt anyway.
If they were manufacturing things that were being used within Glenwood, I think that that would be, do you agree that if they were?
Yeah, this is we talked about, you know, in drafting this, but I understand your concern with that.
So
and
that
Terry and I can continue to work on some language that will accomplish that.
Okay.
Is it
Certainly those things
manufactured?
manufactured in that industrial area are
Right.
not being used in Glenwood. But there's raw materials being transported in. There's manufacturing that occurs in that industrial zoned area. And then those materials are hauled out and to other places. So it doesn't make much sense to have an industrial zoning and then forbid truck traffic in and out of that. Unless we want to change the zoning in that area to residential or something.
How do we accomplish that?
I-
You support that?
Is there a motion?
We might need to buy a few businesses before we do that.
So I don't know, I'm just kind of thinking out of, you know, the practicality of eliminating truck in and out of an industrial zone.
I think we'll take another stab at that.
Yeah, and I would agree with you that that's, you know, that is there, because there is no other way out. You know, at this point in time, there is no other way for those businesses to get there.
Until
Yeah.
Southbridge is built,
Right.
I think we probably have to accommodate that,
So, yeah, somehow.
regardless
Right,
of the,
you can fix that.
regardless of the condition of that.
We will take a look at it.
All right. Similarly, I think that we want to possibly consider some kind of an exception for, at least in my opinion, we might want to consider this. Others may completely disagree, but ordinary construction activity in the 4 Mile Basin, you know, the only way for someone to get a track hoe up to dig a house foundation in the 4 Mile area is down Midland Avenue. And at least I think that, you know, while they are not within the city limits, they definitely contribute to the city economy, and I wouldn't want to add to the cost and bureaucracy of residential construction up in the 4 Mile Basin. So I think to the extent we can draft it to exempt those kinds of vehicles, I'm not talking gas, you know, rig trucks or timber trucks. I'm talking, residential construction. You know.
Could we do it as, by zip code?
That's what I was thinking too, is that it might be a zip code thing.
Okay.
Yeah, because the same might want to be true in the West Glenwood. You know, a lot of West Glenwood isn't in
Isn't
the
county.
city limits either yet. That's a good point. Todd?
So I have a question, because the last time we did a first reading of an ordinance, and we were talking about making changes the next time, and it came back almost identical, and it just made me uncomfortable. I can't remember what it was on, and I realized realize we have some timely issues as to maybe why we need to do this first reading tonight. But with all the input that you're getting tonight, it seems like it's gonna be a fairly different document the next time it comes back. And I'm just not sure how good a governance that is to do a first reading and have the second reading be completely different than what the first reading actually was. And it makes me a little nervous that we may not, maybe we need another work session in the middle of this for everybody to get their comments in, or we spend another half an hour listening to comments tonight on how the second reading should change.
Well, while it does sound like it'll be a little different, I don't think it's horribly dramatically different. We can do a work session on it. I mean, I don't think we thought this was the end and we were just going to bring it back again. We were just starting the discussion.
Right. I think that it's going to be significantly similar to what we've already put together. You know, change within the city to the 8161 or 81601 area code. Make some changes to accommodate the industrial zoned areas and residential development. I don't know that it will be drastically different, but this was, I think, you know, something that is put forward to start the ball rolling on this more than anything else.
But if we were going to remove an entire stretch of South Midland from this reading, that in and of itself is drastically different than anybody who would have read this the first time.
We can bring it back for a work session.
Yeah, I think we,
And that we would, well, that I've heard that we could remove it, but make an exception potentially for
A160.
businesses that are fabricating things in there. So it would be removed, but.
House construction.
I'm just trying to make sure the public's clear, because you know there's gonna be people who are very concerned about this ordinance. And, I mean, if we need to pass this on first reading, maybe there is a work session, not that I'm trying to get more work sessions. But I mean, it seems like we could come back with.
I don't think we ever intended just to bring it, I think we always intended to get more input. But this was just starting.
Certainly, I would expect that the spirit, though, of this ordinance would remain the same. The goal is to keep our streets in as good as condition as possible until we can get them rebuilt and
I don't
try
agree
to
with
control where that heavy traffic goes. So
I don't disagree with where it's headed. It just, if we're going to substantially change this first reading, then I'm not so sure it's ready for a first reading. And again, maybe it is, maybe it isn't.
You know, I would say, I don't think we need another work session. If you want to just wait and bring it back as a first reading on the 18th.
I think we would very much like you guys to approve it on first reading, if you
Tonight.
can find your way to be comfortable with that.
I'm comfortable with it, but know that we need to make sure that those changes are made and that the intent is exactly what we.
Understood. We will make sure that's done.
All right, Jonathan.
Yeah, I definitely think that the people who are the fabricators and the people that live out by Airport Road would be dramatically affected if we can't create some exception. That being said, you know, when we passed, not we, but other city council people up here passed several years ago, the building moratorium for all development in South Midland, because from my understanding, the intent is, or was at the time, that South Midland was in such poor condition that we didn't want significant development happening in South Midland for a road that was dramatically substandard. And the county did not join us in partnership at that time. We've also extended the olive branch, the opportunity to the county to partner with us in a substantial way in moving the conversation forward on Southbridge. And they have neglected to accept that opportunity as well. And if somebody wants to build a home up 4 Mile, and really the houses that are getting built up 4 Mile by and large aren't affordable housing. They're large units. I mean, the 9 houses that are being put in Spring Ridge Reserves are all 4,000 or 5,000 square foot houses. And costs significant amount of money more, or they have to go across Drive Park, and that is a larger expense to them. You know, I don't want to say that's the county problem, because I view those people as my neighbors. There's people that lives in those neighborhoods that are as much my neighbor as Rick's neighbors across the street in West Glenwood that are technically in the county. So I'm conflicted on that. But at the same time, if the county doesn't want to, if they have 300 permitted lots for building that could get built in the next 2 years if economic conditions proved it, this would be one of those ways that we could help control that situation a little bit by not exempting 81601, but by potentially, and I don't think it's fair to have existing businesses have to close up shop or get their businesses completely ruined, even though they are all probably in the county and they're not in city limits, for example. So I'm probably, this is probably a comment that is not an opinion shared by many, if anybody up here, but I think that any opportunity we have to gain a willing partner through leverage with the county, because you have people that'll be complaining to their county commissioners, it's gonna cost me 20 grand more to build this house, or the county has to spend 10 million to improve Drive Park Road to allow for some of those uses because they want to allow development, I guess I'm okay with.
But I'd rather see them spend 10 million to help us build South Bridge.
Well, I'd rather have them spend, yeah, and I think they would too.
Yeah.
But that's, I think that goes to my point, is we haven't had a very willing partner, so why would we make exceptions to our ordinances to partner with county residents when they have demonstrated that they're not going to partner, even with a building moratorium for us? And I understand they're not in a great financial situation and they can't slap down 20 million tomorrow. I'm not asking that. I'm just saying that I don't feel super compelled to make dramatic exceptions. And again, I just want to put that out as a comment, and I'm not expecting everybody to jump on my bandwagon or anybody, but I just wanted it said.
Thank you. Any further comments? So have we opened this up for public comment yet?
We haven't.
No, we haven't. Is there anyone from the public who would like to comment on this item?
We're from South Africa.
We're looking at you.
Seeing none, I will close it to the public and bring it back to council. Just in summary, what I've heard that I think has had general agreement on this council, and I'm not saying this to be argumentative, I'm trying to just sum up what I think I've heard, is, no, I'm just trying to coalesce the last half hour of comments that we've received. I think there's general consensus to remove Midland Avenue from the haul routes. Is that correct?
Is it only the south portion?
I think it's all of Midland Avenue, but then we're going to add in the exception that if you are delivering to a business in Glenwood or to a...
Or if it's somehow fabricated in town.
Well, I'd say to or from a business, I would say to or from a business in the 81601 area code, provided you're still using the most direct route. You know, in other words, if I'm delivering a city market, I can't drive down Blake from 8th Street to 14th Street. You know, I have to, maybe I'm hitting 13th Street and going up to Blake and coming down 14th Street. I think that's what they do. I believe, I could be wrong. Is that?
I'm just trying to think enforcement, because I know Terry Wilson would want me to. But I understand that, let me talk to him.
Okay.
And see kind of what that would look like. But I guess it would be if you saw a city market truck going down Blake, you would know they shouldn't be.
You're right. Right, except if he's at that one. I think because they have to head west on 14th Street in order to be able to back into that dock, and so they're either coming up Park Drive and going north on Blake to 14th Street, which I don't think they're doing. I think they're coming up 13th Street, going, south on Blake to 14th Street is what I think they're doing. You know, but similarly, a truck going to Target can drive down Midland Avenue And then whatever our roads are, West Meadows Corridor, I don't know, the roads out there in the meadows, to get to Target, right?
Yeah.
Or a truck going to a
East Meadows,
fabrication
West
shop
Meadows.
out on Airport Road could do that.
Okay.
And then I think we're also looking for an exception for truck traffic related to residential construction. Is that, is in the 8161 area code?
When you said general consensus, I think generally you have consensus. You don't have unanimous consensus. General consensus.
There was a suggestion that we fire one across the bow.
So we generally think that it's okay for
So I guess I'll ask that question.
Yeah.
For residential construction, yeah.
Is there a reason?
I wouldn't mind having them pay a fee because they're impacting
city
South
streets.
Midland city streets. And they're not.
You've raised residential construction. Is there a reason that you haven't incorporated commercial construction into that as well?
Well, I would say commercial construction within the city limits, in my opinion, but not out 4 Mile. You know, because that would arguably be timber hauling trucks. And I'm not sure if you call that commercial or
Industrial.
industrial, but
Who and how are we going to enforce this? No, it's just.
well, if you see a timber truck going down Midland Avenue.
Well, I don't think we can expect, like, almost like the smoking ban. Sometimes they'll catch people and sometimes they won't.
Well, private haulers, like mom and pop, you know, they might try to get away and they might not know because of education. But the large haulers that are contracted with the Forest Service, I think, you know, would be made aware of how and the ability to access that timber. So I think it's probably the bigger players like timber, oil and gas, kind of potentials.
So to get the Steve's example, if I have a fab business out by the airport, I would have to go down Grand and across 27 to use Midland, and I'd still need maybe a permit to do that.
Well, no, I think we.
No, that'd be
decided
exempted.
that
We're
that's okay.
suggesting that would be an exception to an allowable exception.
In and out of our own industrial zone. I guess the only question here that I see is amongst this council is, you know, do we think that people going up 4 Mile should have to pay a fee to use city streets if they're trucking in and out?
I don't mean to be a devil's advocate.
No, go ahead.
If you're driving down the city streets in Glenwood, it appears you might, and that we don't know if they're going to deliver something in the city limits until they've crossed into the county and started driving at 4 Mile, at which point in time we don't have any jurisdiction over them until they come back empty.
No, I think it would be if they turned off of 82, correct? Isn't that when we would know?
Yeah, but
Well,
not
then they go to
necessarily,
your
but
people
if they're going to your house,
Well, that's true.
then
Sure, the
we would know, but you're right, we would have to get them on the way back. You know, or if you knew this.
I'm just trying to make sure we're doing something smart here, not just throwing something out there.
How
just
so?
because.
Well, I mean, I think that you're gonna get the mom and pop, but if you've got somebody who's doing truck after truck after truck, they're
So,
gonna get.
if we're going after that type of hauling, then the one time up to deliver lumber, or the one time up to deliver a piece of equipment isn't who we're looking for.
Maybe too hard to
It's just
enforce.
gonna be, that's kind of my.
Well, that's why I wanted to exempt that. I wanted to exempt
I was just trying to
residential construction
work
and
through that, 'cause
Probably
And I would
makes
just say,
sense.
you know, if we're talking about a dozen cement mixers and track hoe and other heavy equipment for each house, and there's 300 units today that have permits, and one of those 20,000 pounds, what we talk about, is 1,100 or 1,300 trips equivalent of a passenger vehicle. That's a significant impact even on a reconstructed South Midland. And so I think that there is a significant impact even for residential construction, not for the one-off or two-off that we've seen for a potential large-scale development like a Virginie Ranch type scale, that's going to create huge stress on our city streets.
One point I guess I would make is that, you commented that the county has neglected to, how you worded it,
Take the opportunity
to partner with us on South Midland. That's not exactly correct.
No, on a building moratorium.
Oh, on a building moratorium. Okay.
So
Did we have a building moratorium, or did we have a development moratorium? In other words, you couldn't plat more lots.
How was it written? I think it was a
For the
building.
development, and so I don't think there's been any units platted in Formal Quarter during a moratorium.
And maybe I don't understand the moratorium well. I thought
I can't take a 40-acre piece of land and divide it into 41-acre lots. That's what the moratorium was. It wasn't that I couldn't get a building permit to build a single-family home, I think. Is that?
Yes, that was correct.
Okay.
No major
So
developments.
the Cardiff Mesa, they were, I thought they got built because they were before.
They had approval, prior approval.
Okay,
Yeah.
so they wouldn't have, if they had applied during that moratorium, they would not have been approved.
They couldn't have applied.
I see, okay. So, yeah.
And further to your point, Mike, I mean, we don't have firm commitments, I know, but I know the county has indicated that they are willing to partner to assist with South Midland.
On South Midland, they've indicated, they're willing, their willingness is indicated to be reduced on 27th Street Bridge and very questionable on South Bridge.
Is there a way we could not put it in now, but nicely try to use it as a carrot and a stick? Like, hey, we're looking at doing this. We will exempt you for this kind of stuff if you help us. I mean, I know that doesn't play well in casual conversation, but if we could do it politely.
So in other words, go ahead and put the exemption in right now, but maybe rescind the exemption if.
Yeah, like if we just get nowhere with them,
Well,
they tell us
like
to
we
pack
talked
our
about
bags.
On Southbridge, there's a number of funding potentials, and one of them is in all honesty, it's a toll road where we exempt anyone inside the city limits from paying it, and anyone outside the city limits pays it.
And I don't know how that's any different than having a impact fee on.
Because they could go around on Midland Avenue and 27th Street. See, right now, that's the only access in and out.
Right.
So,
But I mean, as far as the conversation of, forcing a conversation of a more generous partnership, I don't know that I see a lot of daylight between those two examples.
the one is, I don't know.
I think the thought is that we be kind up front, and if we meet resistance in the future to the cooperation that you're suggesting we haven't really had yet, then maybe we have to be a little bit more honest.
Well, and John, how does, if we ever had a scenario where Thompson Divide, for example, came back up as a large development potential, and we were looking at, I don't know, like 100 trucks a day going on South Midland, wouldn't it give us more, I guess, legal credibility to go, hey, listen, we 3 or 4 years ago, here's what we did for reasons like this, rather than address it in reaction to something like that.
You said legal credibility. I mean, maybe the optics aren't perfect at that time, and maybe you have some people who are a little upset about it, but there would be no legal reason that we couldn't do that. We control our own roads. So if the reasoning aside, if it got to the point where something significant like that was happening and we had not received any kind of cooperation from the county, then we could take the actions that we felt we needed to force their hand and to make sure that we are able to maintain our roads and build South Bridge and all of those things.
Well, and the reason that we're doing this is to maintain, our roads are in terrible shape right now, and we've got to try and do whatever we can to preserve them.
Well, I think having more residential development, not discouraging residential development of 4 Mile does that. It maintains construction traffic, number one, and number two, you don't have multiple trips by additional residents of areas that aren't in Glenwood. But I'm done.
Clarification of the definition. What is a commercial hauling operation? What are commercial hauling operations as opposed to a commercial hauling operation? Or if we're using plural, like I mean, to me that would make sense if we're working towards operators who are constantly going up and down our roads and consistently putting weight on our roads as opposed to the one-offs or the up and down with a load of gravel that needs to go up. So what is our definition of commercial hauling operations?
So I think that the definition, and if we need to lay out a more succinct definition, is anything meeting the load and size thresholds on the list that Terry has been working on. If you are meeting those, if you are exceeding the weight limitation or the load limitation, then you are a commercial truck operator.
Does that differ from an industrial? 'Cause
I don't
you
believe
like
so. I
to-
think it would encompass anything. Yeah.
And again, I don't mean to be difficult, but
No.
I still don't quite understand where we're headed. A commercial operator who happens to drive up and down and drop something off is a whole different definition than commercial hauling operations. To me, a commercial hauling operation would be a logging company that consistently goes up and down the hill and is consistently using our roads as an operational. It may sound like a little bit trivial, but if we're not clear on this, which I'm just not, commercial hauling operations means you have a company that's operating a commercial hauling business, right? A lot of these folks are just one-off people. I don't think we want to, I don't think we can, we want our police department worrying about whether or not someone's delivering a track hoe for a mile or delivering a load of lumber. I think they got better things to do. If we're trying to control operations of a commercial entity, we're going to know who they are. Like Jonathan said, they're going to have to be permitted or no.
We are not trying to control
That's what
specific.
I mean, if we're concerned about the weight of constantly going back and forth across our roads.
City market truck.
Whatever. I mean, I'm just saying, like, if we're looking for operations of consistent business.
I think we are trying to protect our roadways, which are failed, from anything that is not delivered locally or produced locally. I don't think we care if you're running 100 trucks a day or 1 truck a day. If you're on our roads and you're not delivering something locally, you're hurting the roads.
I think perhaps the definition does need to be defined since it's in the title of the ordinance. But, you know, my speculation is that it is, as John indicated, if you're operating any, I mean, it doesn't matter whether you're a private person, I'm driving my own truck, or I'm hauling for Acme Trucking, if I'm operating a vehicle of over a certain size or weight limit, I am, by definition, you know, then this ordinance applies to me unless I fall into one of the exceptions. I'm hauling to City Market, or I'm hauling to, you know, build a home of 4 miles, or whatever. Does that make sense?
Yeah, as long as that definition is clear, so we know who it is that is subject to this ordinance.
So, you know, I think in the spirit of this ordinance, and certainly the reason it's being crafted and as it's crafted currently, I could support it at a first reading tonight. But I think we need to, by second reading, clean up some of these definitions and issues, and if that requires a little, you know, work session along the way, I'd be happy to do that. But I think it's important, and I think time is of the essence, as shown by this exhibit from this company that did this survey, to try to get control over our horrendously deteriorating infrastructure.
I'm okay with that. I just want to make sure it's real clear, because it's a little
work to clear it up, put that definition in, or address your concerns, and, you know, we can do another work session on it if you guys want, before we bring it back for second reading.
The only question I have remaining is whether we left South Midland in or not.
I believe we have direction to take South Midland out.
Out,
That would
with
be-
exceptions.
With exceptions.
So
So can we make a motion?
I would have made a motion to that if I could ever do that
If we
again.
could do that.
Go for
I don't know if I could come up with it or not. You want to try, Steve?
So I guess I'd make them, no, I can't even find it here.
Here it is, right here.
It's on the, it's right here.
Go ahead, Catherine.
I move to approve ordinance number 3, series of 2018, an ordinance of the City of Glenwood Springs, Colorado, adopting a new section 120.040.040 regarding haul routes to the Glenwood Springs Municipal Code, and setting forth regulations and permit requirements for commercial hauling operations in the city with, can I say with, as
The
discussed?
exception is.
Yeah, with, as discussed, with removing Midland Avenue from exit 114 to the south city limits, removing Airport Road, removing 4 Mile Road, and removing 27th Street from South Midland to South Glen, and also another one, 8th Street from South Midland to Grand.
Subject to the exceptions that we've
Oh, and
discussed.
exactly, the exceptions for local deliveries and
Probably,
local manufacturing.
yeah, local manufacturing.
Seconded.
All right.
There's a pause.
We have a motion by Catherine and a second by Jonathan to approve ordinance number 3, series of 2018, with the, on a first reading with the amendments as stated. Any further discussion? Is that okay?
Works for me.
Did you think you got all those, Catherine? Yep. Okay, any further discussion? Let's call the question.
Crogger, yes. Goldish, yes. Davis, yes. Gamba, yes. Leahy, yes. Voorhees, yes. Couch, yes. Motion passes unanimous.
Thank you.
All right, we are up to the report from city manager.
Okay. We met with the Summer Music Committee, and what they told us they would like us to do, what they would like to do is create their own 501c3 and run the event themselves, and they're going to ask for a contribution of $20,000 from us.
Will they?
They would like to start their own nonprofit for the event, because we kind of said summer music. We are either like, we met with them, we talked to you, and I said, you know, if the city's doing it this year, we're doing it by city rules. They don't really want to do that. Well, because we're more bureaucratic and we have more, you know, I would say we have to bid out things like the sound system and the management of the music, and, you know, you can't buy beer with city funds, and
Partying government just doesn't mix.
I mean, I think we can be fun, but not as fun as they like to be.
The only thing I would
Never
say
seen how much
is
fun
that if they want to apply for funds, they need to apply through the Financial Advisory Board. That would be my only caveat.
But am I correct, though, that we only have $25,000 left of discretionary funds?
That is partially because we took $20,000 from those funds for the Summer of Music.
I think, but yeah, I think we approved this last year in the budget, did we not?
Yeah, there's $20,000 for Summer of Music in the budget.
Okay.
That's already been approved in October.
Well, I guess my concern with that is just that we, again, we're circumventing and we are not, you know, we get no report, we get no financials, we get nothing if they come directly to us, so.
Can I make, I was kind of thinking this might fall under a little bit of the purview of the new Arts and Culture Board, which we don't have yet, but it would be interesting to hear if they would have a recommendation on how best to run Summer of Music.
It's one of those things that they want to start their own nonprofit and run it. I wouldn't want to tell them, no, you can't. I don't want to be big government shutting down this
Right.
festival that's been there
Something
forever.
more- No, I don't want to shut it down.
And-
I don't want to kill it with bureaucracy either.
Who's they? I'm sorry.
The what?
Who's they? When you say,
There's a
There's-
Summer of
there's a
Music committee.
who is that? Yeah.
Judy O'Donnell's on it, Jim New is on it, Chris Banks, who also is the person who books the music and gets paid, is on it.
Basically, people who run in before.
Well, no, the people who made suggestions on what music to pick. The Arts Center ran it. I think they ran it before the Arts Center ran it,
Okay, so this is going back like 5 years to.
but they always existed and they always like like they're the ones who picked the bands and like collected, they're the ones who passed around the buckets to collect the money.
So they'd like to do that this year.
They'd like to do it this year. They essentially, they would really like it if we would just do what we did last year, but I am not comfortable doing it. Last year it was an emergency. We just did the best that we could.
They're not going to get a 501c3 in the next 6 months.
They're working on it.
Do we need, can we have a work session with them
If you would like to.
next time? I mean, would it be helpful to kind of,
I mean, I'm ready to just, I told them like either we're taking it on or you guys have to take it on.
I'm also fine, just, you know, I don't disagree with Catherine, let's do something where we have some accountability, you know, that we can review their finances, whatever, but I don't think it's another issue that the city needs to be dealing with, just because we got a lot on our plate, and if this group wants to do it, and they can do it successfully, great. You know?
Well, and Jim's on this, Jim no doubt is spearheading this program, I assume.
He has been helping. Yeah. I mean, I think they have a CPA and
He gives me some confidence
yeah.
in.
And I've got a good
it's gonna go.
working relationship with them and we can communicate and that
It,
works.
you know, reflects directly on his firm as well, so.
Yeah, but I mean, I just don't want us to, if it wants to live as a community-based organization, I'd like to let it do that.
I would too.
Me too.
Government should not be involved in this.
Just, it was it was like a one-time emergency, we did the best we could, but we can, Brian can run other music festivals.
Yeah.
So are we waiting for the book acts, or, I mean, I hope you're waiting for this to happen before the book acts, but I mean, are they somewhere in the process of contacting?
I think they were talking to bands, I am literally taking us out of it and they can sink or swim. I might regret that if they come back to us in, you know, May and it's an emergency and we have to take it over again, but that'll be council's decision at the time. But I mean, they clearly expressed this is what they wanted.
To Kathy's concern, having them go through the FPM will have to be asked for and gives that financial reports and stuff like that. Since they're going to be a brand new 501c3, they're not going to have any reports or anything. Is this something that this first year we do just give them the $20,000, but with the stipulation that we expect to see year-end financials?
Yeah.
Okay, a financial advisory board question?
Good lead in.
There has been a desire, and I've heard a couple conflicting ones, and I just kind of wanted clarification. I've heard that we want to do a work session with council every meeting to dive into revenue. And then I think we kind of also said, wait, let's let the Financial Advisory Board do that and just invite council. I don't know, and then there's another option, which I think Steve prefers, is we let the Financial Advisory Board do some work on revenue and then come back to you like every 3 months and let you know. Because you go to enough meetings that you all don't need to go to the VAT meeting.
That's my goal in 2018.
Every meeting.
Did you go to Denver for the?
I didn't say that.
I can let Olivia schedule your calendar. You will never be bored. So is that kind of?
And my personal preference is Steve's personal preference, for the reason that we don't need more meetings, but also that's really what we need to be using. And we have a top-notch financial advisory board right now that I think we've got some very, very sharp people on that, and let's take advantage of that and let's use that. If you want to come to those meetings, fine, please do, but let's let them do what they do.
I like the option number 3. I'd like to have it kept in front of this council regularly, so I think quarterly to have a work session with financial advisory, because there's so many revenue things we need to be discussing. But yeah, I think.
Yeah. But they could come with suggestions of what we should do. Otherwise, we're just kind of talk about it.
And the people on that, I agree. The way to lower the bar and get less talent on that is to have them sit around for 3 meetings talking about if youth soccer deserves more money than youth badminton. And so I don't want people wasting their time doing that stuff. I want people talking about attraction taxes and other things that are higher level, making recommendations to us, and then we get going.
I suppose, Jonathan, I'd be in favor of option C.
What was option C?
Same as option 3.
Yeah. Okay. It's been a long day already. Okay, the final thing was Shelley and I had lunch with the mayor of NGen. We had lunch with the mayor of Basalt. She is very enthusiastic about our future partnerships, and she also wants us to plan a elected official event for the Roaring Fork Valley in Carbondale.
I was
So.
joking about my last comment.
But it's good. I think it's a start. Yeah, there can be alcohol.
As long as there's alcohol, then I'm good. I'll go to any meeting that involves alcohol.
I think it has to be in the middle a little bit, because we're talking about all meeting in the middle together to work
I think
together.
if we're going to organize it, I think we should get the sales tax revenue from it. But
We just have a bigger staff than
all
Basalt.
right.
Can we invite Newcastle? Was that a conversation too, or is it just?
Yeah, that moves the middle mark,
I did have a question about that. We have an upcoming meeting with the Newcastle Town Council, don't we?
We do.
When
Like-
is that?
January 18th.
Yes, the next meeting.
The next meeting. And have we discussed it all with them, kind of the topics of conversation?
We have a picked agenda.
We do?
Yes. I mean, I can't, off the top of my head, I don't remember, but it's what we talked about, housing, like the Lova Trail, how we can work together.
Okay.
So
Is that in the rounds?
I think it should be. It's a work session that starts at 6, so the agenda's gonna be a little different. But, okay, that's all I have. I would wait, and I don't have any dates or anything on the regional get-together, but I think it's a good idea for us to bond as much as we can.
Speak about bonding, if we're not that bonding, but with Newcastle, can we invite them at 5:30 and invite them to join us for food? So, because 6 o'clock is kind of hard, they're coming from Newcastle, we're not going to eat.
Yep.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Can we get Polankas? Huh? Can we have Polankas and some good Polish beer?
No beer at council meetings.
It would be before.
It's the no fun zone.
See, your government doesn't do fun.
We are here to keep you guys out of trouble. true. Yeah. That's all I got.
That's all you got. Any city attorney report?
Well, the city attorney is not here, and so I think that we can skip all of that. Thank you all for your very thoughtful discussion tonight, and if any of you would like to go out for a drink afterwards, it's on Carl.
And on that note, we're adjourned.
I'm not sure if this is how they do it in South Africa. This was
We have not shot
today.
It's totally fine. Yeah, even during a short week, huh?